Yes, I remember Harold telling me that his idea was you would write out a lecture entirely, and then you wouldn't take it out, because if you took it out, the magic would be gone instead. Okay, now we experienced a wonderful lecture earlier, and in the lecture discussed the work of Gerson Shapiro with Harold at one point, and Gerson is happily here and will give us a couple of words. So please, Gerson.
I thought I would talk about the parts of Harold that were not number theory. I went to work with Harold when I was going for my thesis. He's starting a company, and I went to work with him. And he did so many marvelous things, and the kind of mathematics that were not number theory. I'll give you some examples of the kinds that we did. We got, British Petroleum came to this company, which was called Systems Research Group. That was Harold's company. They had an oil field in Kirkuk, and the natural pressure of the oil field from the water coming underneath it was enough so that they didn't have to drill for it. They just stuck a pipe down and the oil came up. That's true. But what was happening over the years, the oil pressure was decreasing. And this guy from British Petroleum named Natanson said, there's a river nearby, why don't we divert the river under it, and that'll bring the pressure up. Well, there was some concern about that, though, because a lot of the oil was in the matrix of the rocks. It was in the pores of it. And so there was some concern that if the water came up too rapidly, instead of an imbibition taking place where the water and the oil would exchange, so that it would release it from the rock, they were afraid it might trap it. So they had tried to do these partial differential equations that govern these particular flows between the different fluids. They tried to do it numerically, and they weren't having any success, so they came to Harold. So Harold designed a numerical program to solve this problem. And it was amazing, but I grew to learn that whenever they asked Harold any problem at all, my normal reaction would be, what, are you kidding? Nobody can solve that. It's impossible. It grew to the point that when any problem Harold was working on, let me see what his answer is going to be. And sure enough, he simulated it. The water and the oil should interchange properly. They diverted the river in Kirkuk, and sure enough, it worked. The oil pressure was increased. They didn't lose any of the oil. It got imbibition, and it got exchanged, and it was all well and good. There was one other project that he was on that it was the moonshot. Republic Aviation was there was a new technique that they had by this called a Kalman filter, and they were asked to do the government had asked the Republic to do a simulation so that if the rocket ship has been shot off to the moon, to be able to keep track of where they are, if things are right, and they would have some adjustments they could make by little jets in case they were too far to the left or to the right. And as they were traveling, so everything was probabilistic. They knew what they wanted the original position to be and its velocity, but there would be a certain amount of error in that. And so the simulation was to take into account the error. Will they still land on the moon anyway? And on the trip, the simulation would make some spot checks of things in different parts, and it would correlate that with what they would expect it to be if they were where they thought they were. And this is very complicated to say, but and then they would make a correction depending on how far they were off from their latest calculation. Well, the program worked beautifully. In the program, they got to the moon, and sure enough, they took it. Republic never gave us. The Republic was going to blame us if they couldn't do it. But once we did it, they never mentioned that we were involved in it. The company, Harold's program worked beautifully, and sure as you all know, they got to the moon. So, I mean, I worked with him for years. I was his student. He was great at everything. I'm not going to tell you any of his other stories. I have too many of them, and they go on forever. Thank you. Thank you very much.